All right, next up, now this is what I feel like we've been building up to. And we'll see if we can squeeze this all into one lesson or if I end up having to break it out into a couple. But I'm going to try real hard here, okay? So now that we've implemented this pagination functionality, we can do the thing that I really wanted to do. And in fact, the only reason we even implemented this pagination, to be honest with you, is so that we could do this next bit. So we're going to now implement the ability to upload. Remember that old CSV file from way back, the one with 5 million records in it? We're going to implement the ability to upload that file into this application, open it up, and by the way, we're going to do it with the zipped file. Okay, so I'm going to teach you not only how to upload the file, but we're going to upload and unzip that file using just Java code to do it. Okay, we're going to upload it, unzip it, and then we're going to stream through it similarly to as we've done many times in the past when we were learning how to do the Streams API and all of that. And then we will import some of the records into the database. We're not going to do all 5 million records, okay? Because there are still some techniques that I won't be getting into very deeply in this course where we would maybe want to do that more efficiently. And we're playing around with this sort of toy database, right? We're not using a serious database. So I don't really want to put 5 million records in there. But we will go through all the motions and all the steps, okay? All right, so let me shut up with that because this is probably going to take some time anyway. All right, so first step is let's grab and implement another file chooser just like we've got down here, but we'll put one somewhere around in here. I don't know where, maybe right after this pagination thing, okay? And in fact, I guess what we could do here, let's clean this up a little bit. All right, and then let's just go down to where we've already got that file uploader, file chooser bit. Yeah, I think it's right here. So let's just copy that. And then come up here and let's see here. So let's try putting it right after the pagination stuff and see what that'll look like first off. Now we're not going to be binding this to a field of some object up here. So for now, I'm just going to get rid of that so that we don't like maybe confuse things too much. And let's rename these two bits here to something like CSV file, because that's what that's going to end up being, okay? And while we're at it, let's also add in a name, and we'll use the same name there, CSV file, okay? And then we'll change this label to CSV file, I guess. That would make a lot of sense, wouldn't it? Okay, so let's refresh. Let's see how that looks. That's good enough for me for now. Okay, all right. So there's our little file chooser here. Now, in order to be able to upload files, you may have forgotten this, but please keep in mind, this top section here has its own form, right? Because we've got these two buttons here. However, the form that's being used up here currently is using more of the default settings for a form. So if we come up here and see how this form is set up, there's the form. All we've specified here is that it should use the post method for sending data back to the back end. But you may recall that when we want to send files, we cannot just use this default here. So we will need to set the encode type, and we will need to choose multi-part, if you may recall that, right? That's what allows us to be able to send file data and things of that sort, and larger amounts of data. Okay. Now, the way I envision doing this is that we're going to click that button, choose a zip file, and then we'll need to push a button to actually submit it or send it or upload it, right? So I think we're going to want one more button, one more action button. All right, so I'm going to come down here and just copy maybe the edit button. And now I want to actually do something a little differently than what we were doing before. And honestly, I should have done it this way before, but I just kind of wasn't really thinking at the time. So what we can do here is we can actually give all three of these buttons the same name and just differentiate them by their value. You'll actually see this pattern done probably quite a bit. In fact, like I said, I wasn't really thinking when I was doing this initially, but here's what we can do. So I'm going to select all three of these names, and I'm going to give them all the same name, which is action. And then over here, I will call this first one edit. I will call that last one delete. And then this middle one, we will call import. Okay, you see where we're going with this? So that way, the only thing that's different here is just the value that's happening, but we'll know that they were all triggered by an action button, if you will. Okay, so we're gonna change that in that way. And then let's also change this here to say import CSV, I guess. And let's reload. There we go. Okay, and I could change the color of this. In fact, yeah, you know what? Let's change that color real quick here. So let's see, buttons. Let's do success. Okay. Yeah, so primary, we'll go from primary to success. I like a nice green. There we go. Okay, so now we've got a green there. Forgive me for any of you who are colorblind. All right, so now I think we're ready to jump over to the back end to our controller. So first thing we'll want to do is update these methods here to match with the new name and value pairs that we're using. So it will no longer be delete equals true. It will now be action equals delete. And then I will get rid of the true there. Okay, so that's that guy. And then this edit will now be action equals edit. And then we'll get rid of the true. And then we'll add another method now. And so public, and sure, we'll return a string, and this will be import CSV. And for right now, I will not accept any inputs just for a moment here so that I can think and return. So in the happy path, we will make this method return a redirect back to the people page, okay? Let's try it that way. All right, and then let's annotate this guy. So we'll give it a post mapping and some parameters. And now the parameter will be action equals, and what did I call it? Import, I think, right? All right, so we're good there. And then we're going to be accepting an uploaded file, right? So we've done that before. So let's give ourselves some room now to really dig in on this a bit. So where did we do that before? We did that up here, right? Yep, right there. So let's just copy all of what we have there as a starting point. And that was where we're saving a person, right? And we were allowing ourselves to upload the photo of that person. So we'll come down here and we'll do very similar things to begin with, except we won't call this photo file. We will call this CSV file instead. And as long as the parameter that is on the request has the same name, we don't need this bit here, so we'll get rid of that. All right. So in fact, let me just go make sure that it does have that name. Let's see. So the field is right here and we're calling it CSV file, right? And yep, and that's what we're calling it here. So that should all be good, I believe. All right, and then let's just do a quick little intermediate test before we get really deep into it here, okay? So let's just log some information about that file if it is successfully uploaded, okay? So we'll use a log.info and we'll say that the file name is CSV file dot get original file name, that's fine. And then we'll do also the file size, perhaps. File size is CSV file dot size. There we go. Okay, so let's just do that much. And let's see, what else do we need? I don't know. I don't know if we have everything we need, but we'll find out because we're going to try it out real quick, okay? So I'm going to reload. All right. And now I'm going to find a file. And I'm going to go ahead and just choose this zip file here. Now, currently, we're not going to be processing anything other than just uploading it, but let's just see how far we get even with this, okay? And let's go. Okay, so that certainly blew up. Let me open up my console here and see if I can see any reasons why that blew up. All right, looks like size limit exceeded exception. Okay, so we saw this before, right? Where we ran into a file size exception limit or whatever. Now you are probably thinking, well, didn't we address that? And we kind of did, but we're actually hitting a slightly different file size exception now, okay? So what this is specifically saying is that the request was rejected because its size exceeds the configured maximum, okay? And if I'm not mistaken, and you can go back and watch the video, but I believe in the previous exception that we had encountered, it wasn't about the request, it was specifically about the file size itself, okay? So Java and Tomcat and all of these tools that we're using are making distinctions between the maximum size of a file that can be uploaded versus the maximum size of the entire request, okay? All right, so this is easy to fix though. We basically will fix it in almost the same way that we did the other one. So I will go to the, application properties file here. All right, and so here we had set the multi-part max file size to have no limit essentially, okay? But there are other options that we can also specify. Now, I already showed you where you could go in the Spring documentation to find these options. I'm not gonna go there now for you. I think hopefully you know where to go for that. So instead, I'm just gonna cut right to the chase and paste what we actually need, which is this right here, Spring Servlet multi-part max request size, okay? And then I'm going to set that to -1 also, all right? And then I'm going to reload. All right, and there we go. And now that might have replayed the request that we already had, in fact. In fact, I think it did because I see right there, file name, HRM, HR5M zip, and let's see, and there's the file size too. Okay, so that fixed that, all right? So that file successfully uploaded to the controller where we then just kind of let it evaporate essentially. All right, so that's how you get around that problem. Now we will jump back over to the controller and I will close this down again and let's get some more room. So now I think we're ready to do some slightly fancier stuff, right? Because we want to unzip that file and then we want to read the data that's in it and we want to parse over the data that's in it and then we want to convert each of those lines in that file into something that we can make use of in our Java code. And then we want to convert each of the lines in that file into person instances. And then we will take each person instance and throw that into a save method on the repository and save each one, right? That's basically what we are going to do. So hopefully you now have learned enough that you know that we don't want to do all of that here in the controller, right? We want the controller to be relatively lean and mean, and more specifically, we don't want to be doing any non-presentation logic here in the controller, right? So it would probably be much more appropriate to be doing what we're about to do in a service class, right? And I suppose the person service is as good a place as any, okay? So let's go ahead and write a little bit of code as if we already have what we need here. So what if we were to call something like person service dot import CSV, and then we passed in. Now also, we're not going to pass in this multi-part file, right? Because that multi-part file has everything to do with the web, right? And that is in fact why it's in the web package of Spring. So we don't want to pass that in, right? So you already know that we've been passing in from the controller level, not the multi-part file, but an input stream that points to the file, okay? And I think that might be a little bit more appropriate to do. All right, so we will do the same thing here as well. So CSV file dot get input stream. That's what we will do. All right, so now we've got a few issues. So of course, this method can throw an exception. So let's make that happy. So I will wrap this line in a try catch. All right. And for now, I won't deal with that bit there, but I will put my cursor on this import CSV method reference, which is currently red because it does not exist, do an option return and allow the IDE to create this method, okay? And I will accept that void return type and input stream. And here, let's call this CSV file stream. All right, so we've got this file stream thing now. And so now we need to do something with it. So let me just state now, I have debated the whole time I've been making this course whether or not I wanted to teach any file IO APIs and things of that sort. And mostly I was thinking, no, I don't want to teach any of that in this course. And one of my reasons for that is because in over 20 years of Java development, I can't hardly even remember a time when I had to do hardly anything at all with file IO as a Java business developer. That's not to say that some of you may not take a job where you end up having to work with files to some intermediate to advanced degree. Maybe some of you will, but for the vast majority of Java developers that I have worked with, in addition to myself, we just don't tend to have to do a whole lot with files. Now, I'm not saying I've never done anything with them at all, but next to nothing, okay? So for that reason, what I'm going to try to do here, though, I am going to show you a few file IO things that you'll have to use. I don't know that you'll have to know it real deeply. You could just copy what I'm going to do and never bother to fully deeply understand it. But what I really am thinking is that I will likely offer a slightly more intermediate to advanced Java course. And I think it feels a little more appropriate to me to put the file IO stuff in that course. All right, so having said that, now you're going to see a little bit more. Okay, so we've got this CSV file stream, and we're going to assume that this is a zip file, okay? So we're not going to write this code to be very smart for right now. It's not going to check the file name and all of that and see, like, does the extension end with whatever, although that would be pretty easy to do. But I don't care about any of that for right now, okay? So if this is a zip file, one of the first things we're going to need to do is to access this zip file as a zip file, okay? And it's actually not even a file at this point, it's a stream, okay? So I guess I should explain a little bit about streams. So basically, if you imagine a file on your hard drive, okay, and we're reading that file into memory, the way the computer is going to read that file into memory is as a stream of zeros and ones, essentially, okay? Or you could think of it as a stream of bytes, okay? So we need something that can read that stream of bytes, but interpret them as a zip file, essentially, okay? And Java just so happens to have a class that can do exactly that. So think of this input stream here as a faucet, okay? And what we're about to do is attach a filter and a hose to that faucet. And this filter and hose knows how to read the bytes of a zip file, okay? That's kind of what we're about to do. So we're going to create that filter and the hose that knows how to read the bytes of a zip file by doing this, new zip input stream, like so. So this is kind of like the filter and the hose, okay? And then we need to attach it to the faucet, which is the source of all these bytes, okay, that are kind of streaming into the hose, okay? And that source of the bytes is this guy right here. That's the source, okay? CSV file stream, all right? So again, just think of this zip input stream as a special filter and hose that we are putting around this faucet stream here, all right? And then let's go ahead and just capture the output of that. All right, so sure, we'll just call it zip input stream. All right, now this zip input stream itself knows how to interpret the bytes of a zip file, okay? But ultimately, where we want to get to is the ability to read actual lines of text. If you recall, that file with the 5 million records in it is really just a text file, okay? So imagine that you're unzipping that file, and then what you're left with is just a plain text file. So the ultimate goal that we have here is that we want to be able to read the lines of text in that file, okay? So when you're dealing with Java file IO, you basically have two high-level types of streams of data that you can work with, essentially. You've got byte streams, okay, which is what we are dealing with now. And then you can also have essentially text streams, or character streams is really what they are, okay? Streams of characters, and by characters I mean essentially text, okay? So you've got byte streams and text streams. Byte streams are exactly what they sound like. They are just low-level bytes of data, okay? They could represent anything, a picture, an image, a zip file, or some text. But if you're specifically going to be dealing with text, it is preferable in Java to use a character stream because the character stream classes give you easier methods for interpreting actual text, okay? And so when we're first accessing this data, it is a zip file. Zip files are what we call binary files, okay, which means that they are not comprised of text that you can easily read, okay? If you tried to open up a zip file without unzipping it first, you would just see a bunch of nonsense because they're not intended for human consumption for the most part, okay? However, after you unzip the zip file, then what you end up with is whatever the contents of that zip file was. And in our case, we know that the one and only file that will be contained inside of the original zip file will be a text file. And so now we're going to want some way of reading that text more easily, okay? So now we will create another file IO class. And this one you can think of as another hose that we're going to attach to this hose now. But this new hose that we're about to create attaches to a hose that outputs a stream of bytes, which is this guy here. But on its other end, it will output a stream of characters. Okay, so it'll go from a stream of bytes to a stream of characters. All right. And so that will be what we call an input stream reader. Okay. So then we will attach it to the zip input stream like so. And then we'll go ahead and capture that guy also. All right, so now we've got this input stream reader, which will read in unzipped bytes, but it will be capable of outputting characters. All right, and then one more thing we're gonna want now. So this input stream reader is okay for reading characters. However, we wanna be able to read whole entire lines at a time, not just one character at a time, okay? And so there's a really nice convenient class for making that possible, and that is called a buffered reader. So we'll create an instance of a buffered reader, and now we will pass in our input stream reader, and then we can go ahead and capture this guy as well, okay? And so we're going from binary zip data to character data to line data, okay? That's all we're doing with these. It's just a chain of hoses, basically, okay, if you want to think of it that way, for this stream that's coming in. All right, so now that we've got all of that, we can actually just call a method on the buffered reader now. And guess what method we've got on here? We've got a method called lines, which you are familiar with. Not from this class, you're familiar with the lines method that existed on the files class, right? So, but it works exactly the same. It returns a stream of strings. And that's all I wanted, really, is just to get to this point right here. So that is what we want. And now we can do magical things with this, right? Because now it should be in very familiar territory to you, right? So now we just need to parse out the lines of the file and do something useful with them, right? So here's what I'm thinking though. I'm thinking we will map each line to a person. And unlike how we've generally done it in the past though, I'm thinking of adding a method to the person class and letting the person class do the actual converting for us rather than doing it totally explicitly here, okay? I feel like that might be a little bit more of an object-oriented approach, okay? So here's what I'm thinking we can do. Let's just refer to the person class, and we're gonna pretend like we've got this method here called parse, okay? Now we don't actually have that. So now let's let the IDE create that method for us. Create method parse, okay? Now it's trying to make it generic, and I don't think we need all of that. But what this method is going to return is an instance of a person, and it will take in an input of a string, and that string will be a CSV line, right? So one line of a CSV file, essentially, okay? All right, so let's get rid of the generic flag there because we don't need that. All right, so here's our CSV line. And so we're just gonna parse the parts of this and output a person, right? That's all we need to do. All right, so I'm inclined to maybe start with this date of birth though, because I know we're going to need to do extra parsing for that date of birth, right? So let's just remember what this CSV line actually has in it. All right. And I've gone ahead and added back in some index numbers here because we're going to need those when we start trying to parse this out, okay? So let's start by working on the date of birth field here, which is index 10, okay? All right, and it looks like we've got month, day, and then a 4-digit year, right? Okay, so let's use the local date.parse method. Okay, so first things first, let's call the split method here and split these lines. Now, just as a quick reminder here, let me just remind you what is in this file a little bit. So I don't know, we'll take a look at the short.csv. Whoops. We'll look at the first, I don't know, 5 lines perhaps in here, right? So as you see, this is comma separated, right? And so we're going to split on the commas. So we can do that right up here. Now recall that the split method takes a regular expression, so we can pass in that comma. Now, just to be safe, I might want to also allow for the possibility that there could be some trailing spaces after the commas, even though it doesn't look like there are, but just in case there were, just to be safer, we could say any comma followed by 0 or more spaces, perhaps, something like that. Okay, and then let's capture that output, and then let's just call these the fields, right? These are the fields of the lines or of the records. All right, and so then let's parse out that date field. Okay, so if we use the local date.parse method here, then we can grab the 10th field, well, the 11th field really, right? The 11th field because it's 0 based, right? And let's see, and then we'll need to specify a formatter. Now there probably is a standard formatter, but I don't feel like looking for it. So I'm okay to just datetime formatter.of pattern and just specify the pattern manually. So we had a month and then a date and then a 4-digit year. And 4-digit year. And I think it was as simple as that. And then we will capture that and we'll call it date of birth. All right. And so then down here in the return, I think we can just do a new person like so, and then we can start filling in everything. So that ID is going to be null because that's going to be populated by the database, right? And the first name is going to be, so now we need to jump into the spreadsheet here and see first name field is index 2. All right. So fields 2, comma, and then what's next? The last name is index 4, fields 4, and then what do we need next? The date of birth, which we already have parsed out, and then what's next? The email. So let's find the email field. That is 6, fields 6, and then the salary. So that'll be a new big decimal. And then we will pass in, let's see, where's the salary field? I think it's 25. I kind of remember from back when we were in there in that section of the course. Yep, there it is, section number 25, index 25. So fields 25 and anything else? Oh, and then the photo file name, which we won't have one for this imported data, so we'll just pass in a null. All right, and I think that's it there. Now, we haven't been doing any unit testing in this entire section, and that's mostly because I didn't want to have to introduce a whole different set of unit and integration testing that would be appropriate for when you're doing Spring application programming. But now we've got just this one little one-off method here, and this is kind of easy. So maybe we can do one tiny little unit test here at least, okay? So let me make some room, and we'll do a Shift Command T, and we'll say we want to create a new method. So we'll do it after the fact. Okay, and yeah, we'll just take all the defaults and sure we can add all of this. All right, so let's make a new test method. We'll just do this very quickly. Public void, let's see, can parse. All right, and so what we'll do is we'll start off with a CSV line equals, and we'll just, I don't know, we'll grab one line of text, maybe just from right here. Let's see, how can I do that? Yeah, I think this is one line right here. And I guess it goes right down to there. Okay, and let's see if this pastes nicely. Yeah, I think it did. Okay, I don't see any errors. All right, and then I'll make a new line and give myself some room again. All right, so then we'll call the person.parse method and we'll pass in this CSV line and then we'll capture the output of that. person, and I don't know, we'll make a few assertions, I guess. Assert that, let me see here. There it is. Yes, we do get the assert J for free. Assert, there we go, assertions. Okay, so yeah, we'll import that statically. And so we'll say assert that person dot date of birth is equal to, and then we'll make a new local date of, and let's see, what is it? 2/1995. Okay, so 1995 to 19. All right, let's run that. Oh, and oh, okay. Well, I wasn't done over here, was I? Okay, let's close that off. Let's jump back over here. Let's try that again. Hey, and that passed. And rather than make another one, I'm just gonna put a few spaces in here and see if that regular expression that we used will work here. In fact, actually, maybe I should put one right before and right after the date and make sure that that still parses. Yep, and it looks like we're good. Okay, here, and one more thing too, maybe I should change this date just to make sure I'm not getting a false positive. Yep, looks good. All right, so that's as much testing as I care to do for right now, okay? All right, so now let's jump back over to our service. So now presumably we will have a good parser that will result in spitting out actual people objects. And we're going to want to limit some things now. Actually, first off, we're going to want to skip that first line. Remember, that's the header line. We don't want that. Let's skip that. And we're also going to limit, because we're not going to load all 5 million of these records in, okay? Let's load, I don't know. For now, let's do 20 records, okay? And then finally now, here's the big part. We actually need to save them to the database, right? And so we can just do a for each, remember? And we can call our person repository save method, like so. And I think this might work. So, it's always possible that I'm missing something here. Now, ideally, we would have done this with TDD and written tests and all of that, but I'm trying to hurry up and get through all of this, okay? So let's go ahead and rebuild the entire project. All right. And let's see what we end up with. Let's see if any of this is going to work. So back in the IDE here. All right. So let's go grab our CSV file, the zip file now. Okay, now this will only work with a zip file, by the way, okay? We didn't make this smart enough to alternatively skip the zip stuff. We could have, but we didn't, okay? And now let's try importing and see what we end up with. Okay, well, it didn't blow up, but we should have seen this change. So let's go to the second page and see. Yeah, so we're not seeing any change there. So let's see why not. And I forgot one of the most important parts of working with the zip files. So the nature of a zip file is that you should think of it more like a directory, okay? So when you unzip a zip file, the zip file itself could have contents of one or more files or directories inside of it, okay? And so when we unzip a zip file, it's not enough just to unzip it and then start reading data out of it. We must unzip the zip file, and then we have to tell the zip file which file inside of it we want to actually work with, okay? And I forgot to do that, and I apologize to you. Totally forgot that. So what we can do here is maybe right here after we first access this guy, we can call zip input stream dot get next entry. And we're not actually going to even do anything with that entry though, but this will actually cause the zip input stream to kind of jump to the point in the stream where the very first, and in our case, the only file exists. So if you think of a record, an old phonograph record, and you want to actually play a song on that record, just one song, you have to pick up the phonograph needle and move it to wherever that song begins on the record to start playing just that one record, okay? So when we call get next entry, it's kind of like you're telling the needle on the phonograph player to move to the very first track or the second track or the third track or something like that. But if you don't call this method and then you try to read the contents of a zip file or a zip input stream, you won't get anything, okay? And that's what we were getting. We're getting just nothing, all right? And also now this method can throw an IO exception. And I was kind of wondering how come the IDE wasn't bothering us with the IO exception business, and now I remember why. All right, so we will simply go the lazy route and just wrap all of this in a try-catch block. All right, and let's reload. Okay, then we'll come over here. Let's grab a file again. Here's our zip file, and let's import this baby. Hey, what do we have here? A lot more data now, right? Now, actually, before we even go looking at that data, I meant to do one other thing. Let's jump into the controller. Let's change the default number of records per page. Where was that? Whoops, there it is. I don't know, let's do maybe 10 records per page. There we go. So you can already see that we've got a lot more data now. So we've got 3 pages and looks like we successfully loaded up. I remember Lizeth. You guys remember Lizeth, right? There's good old Lizeth. She's back. And we'll go to the next page and look at that Imogene, Hagopian, and Jesusita. I remember Jesusita. Or Jesusita. I guess that should be Jesusita. Sorry. Sorry for the Spanish speakers and maybe people from Portugal. I don't know. Portugal and Brazil. Maybe, I don't know how you guys pronounce that. And Fausto and the whole gang's back. So there we go. We were able to import a zip file. Now, let me also state quickly, this is a very realistic use case right here. Many business developers of web applications, both on the front end and the back end, like what we're kind of doing here, will be asked by the business from time to time to make an application like this where users can enter records and edit records and do all kinds of stuff. And they often want to be able to upload a CSV file. And usually it won't be one with 5 million records in it, by the way, okay? But they often want to be able to do all of these kinds of things that we are doing here, okay? So this represents a very realistic use case. Now, we're going to have at least one more technical lesson after this because there's one more use case that I know we're going to need to fix with this, okay? And I want to show you that briefly, but it's going to be really easy. And then, I don't know, I think we might be done here unless I think of some more stuff, which is entirely possible because as you can see, I enjoy doing these things and I enjoy doing them with and for you and teaching you how to do this stuff. So let's meet up in at least one more technical lecture where I will show you one little thing that we're going to want to fix with this, at least one more thing that we're going to want to fix with this, okay? So I'll see you in the next one. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this content and you'd like to help me out, there are several ways you could do that. First, you can always click the like and subscribe. That'll help me out a lot. Additionally, another way you can help me out is to check the link in the description below. That'll link you to my website where you can find additional courses. And finally, for those of you who might be interested in starting a new career as a professional software developer, I offer a free PDF guide that will detail exactly how you can get started in this field with no college degree and no prior experience. All you need to do is click on the link in the description below. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one.